Welcome back, everyone, to Podcast 1111 for a surprise guest Sunday. Today, I am thrilled to say we have someone very near and dear to me. And when I say very near, I mean right next door. It is my neighbor. So, briefly, will you please tell us who you are and what you do?
My name is Bob Vasquez. I'm retired. I used to be in the international freight business. And before I got into that, I had to go into recovery.
That's a perfect segue into our topic today, which is addiction and unhealthy habits. And you've overcome some addiction of your own. What can you tell us about what you had to deal with and what stage you're at now?
I had to deal with back in 1989 and before, I was drinking and using drugs at the age of 10. My parents were alcoholic, and I carried on that trait. And I blew through some marriages and some family, and I had a flower shop. I lost the flower shop because of drugs and alcohol. And I ended up in jail in the psych ward on my daughter's birthday on April 10th, 1989. And my mom told me that she's zipped up her pocketbooks, that she's not going to help me no longer financially. She's not going to help me get out of jail unless I went into recovery. It was a no-brainer, right? Even if I wasn't serious, I told her yes, just so I could get out of jail. Right away, when I came to, I was tied down. I asked to see the pastor in that part of the jail, and they did send him over. And I told him that when I told them when I got arrested that I wanted to kill myself, I didn't mean it, and that I don't want to kill myself. I just need some help with my drinking and using drugs. And I wanted him to be a facilitator to get me out of the psych ward and let me make a phone call. And I've been in jail before, and you do it without being excited. And when you ask for requests, because if you ask all rambled up and all running amok in your mind and your speech, they're not going to help you. So calm down, realize where I was at. I need to make a phone call and I need to talk to a pastor. So he definitely did exactly that. He helped me get to use a phone, and I called my ex-wife, and she said, "Your mom said she'd get you out if you go into treatment." I said, "I'll go." So they paid the bail, and her insurance covered for psych ward in Long Beach called Coastview. It was in the same area as Long Beach Memorial Hospital, Southern California, near the ocean, and they had a satellite recovery center next to a large hospital. I went in, and I didn't know what to expect. I haven't been in recovery before. I did get two 502s, which are drunk driving or under the influence. And I had to do a lot of AA meetings, but I never really was serious about it. And I was actually going through a year program for alcohol abuse ordered by the court. So anyway, I was still drinking. I got arrested. I got put in jail. They moved me to Coastview. And right away, the next morning, after intake and all that, they sent me to an AA meeting at 6:45 in the morning. And I met this gentleman, Virgil. And Virgil turned out to be my spiritual advisor, but I didn't realize that. He soft spoken, knowledgeable about recovery. And he said to, for me, once in my life, shut up and listen, because this is the best choice I've ever made, is to try to stop what I'm doing and continue my life. And that's what I did. I signed up for the social worker, the psychologist, a therapist, and I wanted them to pick Bob's brain and try to figure out what's going on with me. And it all boiled down to my alcohol and drug abuse. And I had to correct that. And I started going to meetings. I got to know Virgil better. Then they going to kick me out after 10 days. The insurance didn't want to pay any longer. So I talked to Virgil and told him I was going to have to get out. and he was dating one of the facilitators there at the time, and she had approved 1 year aftercare. And I was open to go to meetings there. I was open to go to talk, make appointments for the psychologist to continue work on myself, and the therapist to work on myself. It was a phenomenal gift. I think about it now, and I can't believe it just fell into my lap if I wanted to take it. And I knew that for me, that was God doing for me that I couldn't do for myself.
And what stage are you at now in all of that?
I am sober 35 years in April. Still go to meetings. I sponsor gentlemen. I make a lot of phone calls, and I try to help out when I can, whoever it will be. Someone got my phone number and gave it to someone, and he lives in Poland. He calls me every day at 11 o'clock. I had another person that wanted to go back drinking, and he just called me this morning and said he wants to know when my next meeting is, that he wants to surrender again. It just happens that way. You lead by example.
Well, you're setting a great example, that's for sure. I want to know, how the heck did you get involved in drugs at 10 years old? What kind of drugs were those?
It was smoking pot.
How did you have access to that?
A friend of mine in school, his older brother, and then my friend would go in and pinch a little bit here and a little bit there from his stash of stuff he was selling. And that's how we bought it. We could either buy it, we'd gather our money, about five guys, put in $2 a piece and buy $10 worth. Back then that would last for a long time.
Throughout this week, we've talked about unhealthy habits and how they can subtly, without our even realizing it, sometimes lead to addiction. Can you share your perspective on that?
I would say that the lifestyle nowadays, sometimes it's glamorous to see the different people in clubs, see the different people drinking, also using drugs in movies, and people want to experiment and see what it really does. And some people have that bug inside of them that once they start, they can't stop, and it becomes an addiction. They're not willing to change, so they don't want to get recovery. They'll just try to do it on their own, which doesn't work.
You brought up such an interesting word, the word glamorous, because it's become glamorous to be in rehab.
Yeah,
All these high end celebrities you hear at these fancy country club rehab estates. So that's become like a pop culture joke almost. When I was growing up, well, and long before me, that's when smoking was considered so glamorous, but it was just part of being cool. Very interesting. I love that you brought that up. You have such an open heart and are always looking for ways to help and bless people. And I should know because I'm the recipient of some of that. How do you do that when it comes to those facing addiction?
for me, the more you need help yourself on the left hand, on the right hand, if you just open your eyes and be willing to listen to people, I give my phone number out to a lot of people. I give my phone number out. My daughter gives out. If she hears one of her friends, she'll say, "Hey, call my dad. He's pretty good at that kind of stuff." One thing leads to another. And when people reach out to me, I think, well, what am I doing for my recovery? Am I calling people? Am I going to meetings? And the reason I still go to meetings is you hear of the newcomers starting out in their struggles, you get their phone number, and then you call them and say, "Hey, I've been around for a while. Is there anything I could do to help you?" It's sort of like a circle, because in my circle of friends that are sober, I'll give you a quick example. When I first got sober, I had people chasing me. I had taxes from the flower shop that I closed, from personal taxes I didn't file. And I told my sponsor, Virgil, after a while, I opened up and let the whole can of worms out to him. And he said, "I can't help you over here, but as far as your taxes, that guy over there, he had bad taxes and they're all cleared up." So after the meeting, I went over and talked to him, and he told me about this tax person. She was a tax therapist. That's how she called herself. And I took all the papers, everything into her. all the whole story, and one by one she put things together and filed them, and I was getting returns back to pay fines that I already had for non-payment, and we set up a payment plan. And then I told her I couldn't pay her very much money, and I went in there on Saturdays and Sundays and did different chores for her and did word check on stuff that she was writing, and I didn't have to pay anything. And she took care of all the taxes, everything, and right now I don't owe a cent.
That's
Thank
fantastic.
you.
I mentioned smoking, how that used to be such a big fad, and trends definitely come and go. For those who used to watch the TV series Mad Men, it seemed like every time a meeting was held in an office, someone was offering an alcoholic drink in the office. And there were a lot of meetings, the show. What sort of societal or cultural changes of trends have you seen over the years when it comes to unhealthy or addictive substances?
Well, there's different levels, I guess. If you started off with smoking, I remember you were able to smoke on an airplane. You're able to smoke in offices. You're able to smoke at a restaurant, and all was divided. It wasn't even a divider. Just to the left side of the restaurant is non-smoking, and to the right side of the restaurant was smoking, all in the same room. Now there's no smoking anywhere. Schools, churches, restaurants, airplanes, and there's a swing toward, and I can't remember what president started it of the United States. The big, was it Nixon that started the war on drugs?
I think that was Reagan, Nancy Reagan, just say
Right,
no.
that's it. That's right. Because Nancy went into a program in Palm Springs. And when she came out, she wanted to make a difference. She had the power, she had the money, and she made a difference. Just say no.
Well, then there was
And
the Betty Ford Clinic. Remember
that's
that?
it. The Betty Ford Clinic in Palm Springs, still there. And that's how the culture changed, and that started with her.
And since then, we've had substances being legalized.
The big drug now is methamphetamine, cocaine with some fentanyl, and you don't know who's mixing how much fentanyl and how much cocaine, and there's some fentanyl in some of the methamphetamine because fentanyl is inexpensive to add into to double the size of the cocaine and methamphetamine. That's why there's so many people dying. And then there's the traditional Valium and Vicodin for pain. People get hurt, and let's say they have a broken leg or they have a bad back or broken back. They start on this Vicodin, and it's addictive.
Are there any types of addiction that seem more prevalent today? And are there any that have fallen by the wayside from the mainstream?
I would say that pot has fallen off by the wayside, even though it's a gateway drug. Say there's three people in the room and the doctor gives off some marijuana to relax because they couldn't sleep or whatever it is. And then two out of the three aren't addictive personalities, and the one takes the pot, and then that makes them want to do other drugs.
Have a predilection towards addiction?
Correct.
In the digital age, what have you found to be the best sources for people getting help with overcoming addiction?
Well, through COVID, everybody started bringing up Zoom meetings, and that lets people go to either AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, CA, Cocaine Anonymous, NA, Narcotics Anonymous, and even food programs that it's called CHOW or Overeaters Anonymous. They're all 12-step groups, and they have Zoom meetings, and you don't even have to leave your comfort of your own house or even offices to do a quick Zoom meeting that lasts about an hour. It just makes it so much easier for people in recovery to get meetings, get phone numbers. And I have to say that the first meetings I took serious because I had to do so many AA meetings and I wasn't serious. But I did get serious when I got out of jail. My first real meeting, beside the one in the recovery center, was across the street, and that was the CA meeting, Cocaine Anonymous. I'll explain it this way. If you were on the Titanic and they threw out a bunch of lifeboats There's the A lifeboat, the NA lifeboat, the Cocaine Anonymous lifeboat, and I dove in the water and someone reached out their hand and pulled me into the CA lifeboat, and I got sober in Cocaine Anonymous. There's not any Cocaine Anonymous meetings on Wednesdays, so I would cross over and do Alcoholics Anonymous. But that's how I started.
Are there certain telltale signs folks should look for to determine if they or a loved one are starting down the road of addiction?
That's a difficult question for like a parent to talk to their kids about because the kids are going to jump up and down and say, mind your own business. But on websites, whether it's Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, See How, which is a food program, you're able to go online and pull some documentation, do's and don'ts, 20 questions to see if you're an alcoholic. So there's different computer generated websites to help you determine whether you are or not. A lot of times it's court ordered and you get into trouble and the judge orders you to go to so many meetings. Toward the end, I was signing my own court card. Once you get a pattern of what they do, you just copy and no one really checks it. Then it's turning to the judge and he said fine and you get your license back and everything's cool. They're going to get in more trouble because they're not completely surrendering their life to a higher power that would make some change in their life. And that's what it's all about, making change in your life.
For you, what's been the most difficult aspect of wrestling with addiction?
At the very early stages, I had to give up all my friends that I used to drink with, but they weren't friends. I wanted to be loyal to the drug dealer that I was using, and that's not the people to be loyal to. Those aren't friends. Pretty soon, if you stop hanging around and you get rid of all the drug people in your life or drinkers in your life, and you hang around more with people in recovery and build a foundation of brotherhood, let's say, you build a whole new relationship. Plus, you start apologizing for the things you did with your parents, your loved ones, your families, and the families will start getting back together. And it seems to work.
I was going to ask what's been the most rewarding aspect of the experience, but that one's going to be hard to top.
One of the biggest ones was having my mom and dad forgive me. And they got to see me sober before they passed away. Huge for me.
What are you looking forward to next in your own life?
I don't know what it is. I'm recently divorced and I have a foundation of sobriety and I started going back to meetings more. And I went back to church. I joined a singles group out of church, not to use it as a dating source, but to have fun following Jesus.
This being our last special guest segment in what I call Love Month, do you have
Hmm.
any suggestions on ways people can love themselves more?
Clean up the things that you do that you know that's wrong and stop hiding. Be open and honest about what's really going on in your life and get some help.
Any last thoughts for listeners on this sensitive but very important topic?
A lot of people say, well, where do I find help? And nowadays, with the computer right at their fingertips in their phone or their laptop or home computer, you just start Googling recovery. How do I get started in recovery? And it all lays it out in an outline form. Whatever your drug of choice is or alcohol, if it's just alcohol or if it's just drugs, then that'll lead you to what group you want to try to go to. You find out the schedule and see if someone will go with you so you're a little more comfortable. And then you take it from there. You find a sponsor, and the sponsor will help you get into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and start working the steps. And you start journaling and writing, and that's what I would do.
Bob, I can't thank you enough for not only discussing this, but being willing to be so vulnerable and to tell your story from beginning to end, because I bet there are a lot of people out there. You mentioned not hiding. I bet there are a lot of people that might feel ashamed that they're the only one that's done whatever it is they think they've done that's horrible. We're all going through something, and shame doesn't do anybody any good, and it just makes it take longer to get the help. Thank you, thank you, thank you again. It's been an absolute treat having you on. Everyone, Chérie, stay some. Tuta.